Shalom all, Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com. Bringing to you today our daily Sefer Yetzirah class. This is lesson 11 in this series, and we dedicate all these classes, of course, for the sake of the health, the well-being, and good of everybody who is today facing the issues with the corona. So, blessings to everybody in all these things. And now, to our class. We introduced in our previous class the second Mishnah of the first chapter, which deals with the topic of the 10 Sefirot, which are called Bali Ma. Bali Ma means without any substance or form. And then we described the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. We divided them into 3 different forms. We'll get to that in a minute. Obviously, the relationship between Sefirot and Otiot, letters, is that relationship which we're very familiar with called body and soul. Now, when we look at the realm of, in quote, body, which is our physical world, I'm pretty sure science would say, is made up of atoms. Everything in our physical world is made up with atomic structures. Well, we understand elements, all right? You have hydrogen, you have helium, you have all the different elements that we all know. You could take 2 atoms of hydrogen, mix it with 1 atom of oxygen, and you get H2O, which makes water as we know it, etc., and so on. Well, everything is a combination. So we have over 100 different elements, as we know, that form and combine all the different structures that make up everything that we know in this physical universe. Fine, we understand that. We have this exact same concept here described in our Torah. There's an old midrash that states, in the beginning, God gazed into the Torah, and then from the Torah created the universe. What this means, and we've described this in our previous classes, is that there is that pre-existing pattern, the, in quote, ideal, that's the word that Plato would have used, from which everything in this world exists. In other words, this is the foundation of that concept which we call a higher realm. So we say that as above, so below, that this world is a reflection of some higher ideal. Well, again, we talk about these things. We talk about it in such a nebulous way, a generic way. We never really understand the subtle nuance of detail. Look around this physical world. Everything is detailed. Atomic structure, right? I have a pen here. Actually, it's a pencil, right? It's made of plastic. The plastic has a atomic structure to it. I have here, well, whatever I have here. I have so many things, I'm going to choose, waste time. No, but everything has its own atomic structure. Well, when you're dealing with energy, energy has its equivalent structure of I don't want to call it an atomic structure because it's not atomic, it's energy. Even people, great scientists like Albert Einstein recognized this. Everything in the physical world of matter is essentially energy. Remember E equals mc squared, right? Energy is mass times the speed of light squared. So you take something, you speed it up really fast, and it turns into energy. Why? Because it essentially is energy. That ultimate energy from that higher pattern is what we call, in our Kabbalah speak, the Sefirot. And the forms of this world are the letters. Now, like we said, God created the universe. How? The Bible says he spoke. What did he speak? God said, well, when you speak words. Words are made up of letters. Letters are sounds. Now, if we're talking about the combination of atomic elements, well, we know we have over 100 different elements. And in our Hebrew language, we only have 22 different letters. Actually, I have 5 final forms, which makes 27 in the modern form of Hebrew, but that's not the point. Don't get confused by thinking that each letter forms, if you will, an atom, like that hydrogen is an aleph, etc., and so on. No, it doesn't work like that, okay? Is there a correlation between atoms and letters? Very possibly. Is it possible that there are over 100 different letters, if you will, that we don't know? Very possibly. Why? Because if a letter is a sound, and a sound is a vibration, and the vibration is the foundation of the energy underlying the definition of an atom. And what is an atom? It's the combination. Remember from good old science class? You have the protons and the neutrons in the nucleus with the electrons floating around them. And depending on the number of the protons and the neutrons and electrons making all these orbits, that defines an atom. 3 different structures. And that is so curious because we define our letters in 3 different forms. This is where it's important for us to understand, as opposed to trying to think that we have to have 100 or so letters. No, understand that in each atomic structure, there's a fundamental triune of particles, right? Protons, neutrons, electrons. And that is what forms the atom. We have the 3 types of letters, which are called mother letters, double letters, and simple letters. The mother letters we described, again, well, you know what? I'm not going to get into the different types of letters right now, simply because all the rest of the Sefer Yetzirah is going to deal with that and correlate all these letters, all their powers, astrological, biological, and all this other kind of stuff. So let's just focus on this concept of this, forgive the word, Trinity. This triune essence. Because Rahamim introduces to us here what's very important to understand. And that is the nature of the Sefirot. The Sefirot, like we said, they're not just this nebulous, bland, blah light. Just like everything in the physical world made up of atomic structures is this massive, multiple combinations of everything. So the Sefirot are equally complex. Look at human DNA. We've had billions and billions and billions of people living on Earth, pre-Adamic, post-Adamic, whatever. And we've never had a replica of anyone. What are all these human beings made up of? DNA. What is the DNA made up of? Well, molecules. What are the molecules made up of? Atoms. So the atoms are combining in all these different forms, creating the multiplicity of expression. It reminds me of the very famous verse in the book of Psalms, which the Kabbalists use to associate with this. They say, Barov am hadrat melech. In the multitude of the people is the glory of the king. In the beginning, Rabbi Chaim writes in his Etz Chaim and other writings, why did God even create a universe? I mean, who cares? And he says, so that it could be called by his names. And that means that God says, how could God be called merciful if there is no one with whom he could show mercy? How can God be called just if there is no one to whom to show justice? Very profound concept that the cause of creation was the dawning of consciousness itself within what we call God. That's a really cool concept if you think about it, that the entire existence is the process of individuation of God itself. Notice I say God, it. Most people still want to think of God as a he, Sistine Chapel, little old man with the white beard. We got to transcend that. Yes, of course, the Bible uses the male gender when describing God because there was no middle, neutral gender. There we go. It was always male and female. Why? Because in those days, that's the way people thought. So the Torah always speaks in our language. And the Torah was given to us, 3,500 years ago, and it spoke the language of people then. So that's why we got to transcend, go beyond. Getting back to now our Sefirotic energies. Rabbi Chaim says like this. I'm going to read to you from his book. Haklal ha'ole, the general rule that arises. Koach ha'elyon shegazra ha'chochmato yitbarach, the supernal wisdom, all right, the power, the supernal power that God ordained in his wisdom, all right, nehalak lebechinat shlosha halakim. They are divided into 3 specific functions. He says here portions. They're called Hesed and Din and Rahamim. Take a look at the traditional diagram of the 10 Sefirot. And you'll see 3 columns, right, left, and center. These are the powers and the polarities, which so curiously correspond to the energies within the atom. Protons, positive; electrons, negative; and neutrons, neutral. We refer to them as Hesed, mercy, right column; Din, severity, left column; Rahamim, grace, if you will, center column. That concept of polarity and fluctuation is the foundation of every atomic structure in this world. And what we have revealed here is the reason behind it. It's like we said, everything below reflects above. It's because it's a reflection of the energetic patterns of this higher domain from which our universe came forth. It is the foundational structure of that ideal which we spoke of earlier, the pattern from which it all comes forth. Kabbalah speak, we call that the world of Atzilut. Okay? So, Hesed and Din and Rahamim, these are the 3 foundations of how these things work. And all the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are subject to their influence. The 3 mother letters are said to be the horizontals. If you look at the Sefirot, you will see the pattern, the diagram of the Etz Chaim. You'll see it everywhere. It's on KosherTorah, it's everywhere else. You have the 3 horizontal lines that connect Chochmah to Bina, Hesed to Gevura, and of course Netzach to Yesod. Horizontals. Those are, if you will, like the groundings. All right. Chochmah Bina is the realm of the mind. Hesed Gevura is the realm of the subconscious emotions. Netzach Hod, the conscious emotions. Why do you have subconscious and conscious emotions? Why don't we just have one? Well, ask yourself that. Think of how you feel, and then ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Where do these feelings come from? You're going back into the nebulous area. Why? Very simple. When we talked about we have this higher dimension and our lower dimension, well, they merge at a point. But that point is not this very straight line. It's that area of transition from one realm to the other. That transition is this cloudy area wherein which things aren't so clear. It's, if you want to think of it as gradients, okay, think of it as a higher and lower. So our lower world is this physical world of structure. The higher world is that higher realm of ideals. It's more fluid. It's almost like the quantum potential, which has not collapsed into a finite singularity. So it can exist in multiple potentials. Indeed, you get back into chemistry and you talk about atoms. And today, I remember when I was learning this stuff, last century, dating myself. Remember how we used to draw the atoms? They had like little balls of the protons and the neutrons and then the balls of the electrons going around. Well, electrons today aren't so simple. They say now they're in a cloud rather than little balls because we don't know exactly where they're at. They exist in a state of potentiality. Modern physics and its experiments have shown some really weird properties that things can exist in like 2 places at once. You have this quantum entanglement between particles, which seem to have communications at speeds of thought, verified in a laboratory to be multiple times faster than the speed of light. So we're not dealing with mass, physical. We're dealing with the higher energies. Science gets this. They understand this, and so must we. Now, this is not just a lesson in science. What this is a lesson of energy, is to help understand ourselves. And in our meditative version of the Sefer Yetzirah course, we learn how to experience Sefirotic energy and, of course, flow with it. Now, in our Kabbalistic traditions, we're certainly not the only ones who do this. In the Orient, specifically more so in the Taoist or the Shaolin traditions of the Buddhists, in which they deal with energy. on a regular basis. Many of the Tibetan Buddhists also deal with energy, and they're able to actually concentrate the flow of energy, focus it. It's alleged that some can even make it materialize. And being sensitive to it. You are not in control of the energy, but from time to time you can use it. Think of it, if you will, like the Force as described in the movies Star Wars. Right? You have the Force. You don't control the Force. Right? You are, if you will, subservient to the Force, but yet that Force can flow through you. Well, the Sefirotic energy can flow through you. At its most basic form of life force energy, we discussed this yesterday, nefesh, that's the life force that gives life. We project that every time we give a blessing to somebody. We try to give them life, health, wealth, prosperity, and all good things. Especially at this time of virus, we give that blessing out. Even through the videos and everything else, we project the positive energy and let it go through space and time as it does. The higher, more refined level, motivation, we call that ruach. And the higher level than that, the direction of the mind, all right? We call that, and again, the levels of soul, nefesh, ruach, neshama. So these are those subtle ways of energy. And again, I've been involved in martial arts all my life in this respect. Even the Chinese, they understand this. When they talk about the power of the chi and how it follows the power of the mind and how it all works together. This is the same Sefirotic energy, and it is Hesed and Din and Rahamim in the middle. There are those forces which are going to always extend out and 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 out. And then eventually things collapse back in. You don't want them to collapse too small, right? Think of it like a sun. You want it to collapse too small, it's going to fall and create a black hole. No, it has to have a proper balance. Out, in, a breath. So Hesed and Din and Rahamim. Het is the first letter of Hesed, Dalet the first letter of Din, and Resh the first letter of Rahamim. It spells the word HaDaR, which means really nice. So we always refer to the energies of HaDaR, the balance, whether it be in the Sefirot of any level. There always has to be the balance. Now, we spoke of the three mothers at the three levels, being the horizontals. The 7 letters are called doubles. These doubles are the verticals. They form the columns, right, left, center. Boom, boom, boom. And that's why they're doubles. Why? Because if you have a column, guess what? It goes up and down. So this is what we call Or Yashar, the light which comes from the higher world down to us. And bing, 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 the light from below has to reverse and go back up. Like a breath. That's why we are so intimately connected with the universe, and our behavior on a daily, on our daily affairs counts, because the energies that we project from ourselves and our behaviors and our emotions vibrates into the universe. And based upon this concept, we believe that everything is interconnected. So even things like the coronavirus, right? Why is it here? Well, there are ways and means to how to commune with the spirit, the angel of the virus, and you could ask. But we believe that these things materialize. Now, corona is not something, a brand new creation. It's been around probably forever. But why is it acting the way it is now, causing the chaos that it is now, is for a reason. Because of energy imbalances. And this has come to restore balance to the force. That's pretty much everything that happens in life. Certain things are meant to be together. And if they're held apart, somehow the universe is going to bring them together. Some things are together which don't belong together. And if that's the case, then the universe is going to make whatever happened to separate them. They go back to their place. Those sensitive to HaDaR energy will recognize the places and allow things to be as they are, put things where they need to be, and do what's needed to be. The 12 letters These are the diagonals which connect all the paths. And again, we'll talk more about this in our future lessons. But with this understanding, we've concluded this Mishnah. And God be willing, in our next class, we'll pick up and learn the next Mishnah. But now, of how these things apply within us and our energy. Alrighty, guys. Hey, look. Check out the courses that we have available for you at our KosherTorah School. We got a lot of good stuff for you. And again, this is something for you to practice, something to put into function for yourselves. Learn energy, experience energy, use energy. Don't be a Sith. But we can be, if you will, almost real Jedis. Right? Not like fantasy forms in the movies, but the real deal as it's been passed down in our traditions from the beginning. Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School. See you all in our next class. Shalom.